Hi there, thanks for tuning in. I thought I'd have a look today at a few of the bigger size box games from my Spectrum collection. These weren't so common on the Spectrum. Obviously, the late 90s, the late 80s, early 90s, the card box phenomenon absolutely exploded, and Amiga games and Atari ST games and PC games at the time, it was very common for them to come in these huge boxes as publishers realised the more space they took up on the shelf, the better their game would be seen by potential customers or potential buyers. So, as I say, this hit the Spectrum a bit late. The Spectrum mainly had double dual and single dual cases. Single dual in the case of budget games, and a few full price games, and then you got the ubiquitous double dual, which was like a small plastic case which was already too big really for the cassette that it needed to hold, but that was kind of the standard that the Spectrum had. And then slowly in the mid 80s and late 80s, all different types of cassette cases came along. And then really when compilations became popular, a lot of publishers realised that they could use these boxes for single games as well if they were high enough profile games or they felt they justified them. And of course, a lot of games, as the ones you've probably seen already in this video, they're simulations, and if they're from people like Microprose or Digital Integration, they always came with huge manuals and other stuff which needed a big box to hold it all in. So we're going to have a quick look through the big box games that I've got, or some of the big box games that I've got in my Spectrum collection, some compilations, some single games. A few that you will have not heard of, maybe, and most of them you probably will have. So let's have a look at the first one. This is a compilation from Ocean, and it's called Battle Stations. So you would have had 3 games on this, as you can see: Operation Wolf, Typhoon, and Guerrilla. Operation Wolf is obviously a first-person shooter based on the arcade game, although obviously you didn't get a machine gun with the Spectrum version. Typhoon, I believe, was a shoot 'em up. It looks like a shoot 'em up. Not actually played that one. Another arcade conversion, as was Guerrilla War, as you can see from the cover. It's got a picture of the arcade machine, and that was kind of, I think it was a running gunner. I might be wrong there because I've not actually played that one instead. Not that one either. And this is kind of standard for these type of boxes. Inside you have a plastic tray, and then 3 cassettes for the games inside, and rather brief instructions. So that's Battle Stations by Ocean. We've got first here one of my favourite compilations, along with this and the next one. You've got Tato Coin-Op Hits. I played this an awful lot. The games I played most on this were Arkanoid, Revenge of Doe there, Bubble Bobble there, Legend of Cage and Rastan, mainly because those are the games I hadn't played already when I got the compilation, although Flying Shark, Arkanoid itself and Renegade are also excellent games. Slapfight, probably the worst game on the compilation, but that's not really to say it's a particularly bad game, it's just the other games are so great. So yeah, that's Tato Coin-Op Hits. So I think you got nice screenshots on the back. 8 arcade smash hits. So for 10 quid, that was pretty good value for money. You got quite a lot of good compilation, good games there on that compilation. And then the famous Magnificent 7, which is another favourite of mine. And here you got Head Over Heels, Cobra, Short Circuit, Frankie, Arkanoid again, Whizball, Great Escape, and a little bonus there, ER Kung Fu, the old ER Kung Fu. So quite an excellent compilation, this from Ocean. I think one of probably their most fondly remembered. And inside again, you'll have a slightly better instruction booklet there, and just 2 cassettes housing your 8 games there. Next up, we've got the first of a few Microprose games. This is Gunship, quite a common release, this one. This is a cassette version. I believe they released it on disc as well. The Speccy struggled a bit with these sort of simulations, especially in comparison to the 16-bit computers. But it wasn't a bad attempt from what I remember, but of course there's no Speccy screenshots to be seen. If we open it up inside, we've got a massive manual, or massive for Spectrum game anyway, which has got over 80 pages in it, and 2 cassettes. So this is quite light, this one. I've got a feeling there's some stuff missing here. There should, I think, be a keyboard overlay in there as well, at least, and maybe an addendum or something they usually had on these. So let's have a look. It's got contents here. Keyboard overlay, apparently endless hours of constructive entertainment. Contents: 1 Gunship disc cassette, keyboard overlay, flight operations manual, and Microprose catalogue and a full warranty. So it looks like what I'm missing out of this package is a full warranty card and a keyboard overlay. So there's Gunship. I must admit my favourite helicopter game on the Speccy was probably Tomahawk, which I don't think actually that really improves upon Gunship. Next up, we've got F16 Combat Pilot by the aforementioned digital integration. They're of course experts at flight simulations. David Marshall, dearly departed David Marshall, was ex-RAF engineer, who certainly knew his stuff when it came to imitating the way a plane or a helicopter flew. We've got little instructions leaflet there, so not much there. A guide to the cockpit instrument panel, which is quite helpful. Oh, and then the proper instructions, I presume this is. So you've got yeah, almost 100 pages of instructions there. So quite exhaustive instructions there for F16 Combat Pilot. I never played that on the Spectrum, but I played it on the 16 bits, and that was quite a nice looking simulation. And there's some very impressive looking screenshots there, but I'm pretty sure none of them are for the Spectrum. Oh well. Never heard of this game before. It's called Fighter Bomber. And this one's by Activision. Again, Speccy cassette. Again, not much sign of Spectrum screenshots. It's by Vector Graphics, who did quite a lot of good games on the Speccy, so I should imagine this is a decent game. But going back to the screenshots, people often criticise publishers for this, but to be honest, by the time we got to this era, which is the late 80s, as you can see it says 1989 there, publishers were releasing games on the 8-bit and the 16-bit computers. And quite often what they would do, they would have the box would be that, and it would be set for every format, and then they put a sticker on it to show you which format it was. I think a lot of them are the same, like F16 Combat Pilot's got the same, it's got a sticker on the corner, and the Gunship one's the same as well. So to make a box, a generic box, which would then be used to put different contents for different machines in, was obviously a lot cheaper way to do it. If you had to do a specific box with specific screenshots for the format you were selling on, I can imagine the cost went up an awful lot for each game you produced. And they're never going to put the Spectrum screenshots on the back, because basically that's the version that, even if it did play the best, would look the worst. So you can't really blame publishers for putting these screenshots on the back of the on the back of the covers. But what I didn't like and had particular bugbear about, which doesn't apply to any of these, is when they did arcade conversions, the publishers, and they put on the back cover, instead of any of the home versions that they'd done, they put pictures of the arcade machine on the back, which I thought was a little bit devious. So another Microprose game, we've got Project Stealth Fighter, which has got a little damage to the box. We've got some homemade instructions here. It's always fascinating to see what people have written about their games, but this isn't quite that fascinating because it's just a list of numbers, and I don't know if it's codes or something to play the game, or just tips on what to do. The usual manual, this time we are up to almost 120 pages. Crikey. Information in there. This one has got the keyboard overlay, so you'd stick this over your Speccy. I'm not sure which Speccy it works for, but you'd stick that over your Speccy, and that will give you tips on what to press during the game. A technical supplement, which is probably, I should imagine, an addendum for controls and so forth. Yeah, all sorts of controls there. Hugely in depth, really. And you also got with this one a nice map. So it's a map of Libya, it looks like there. Yes, that's tactical maps. That's obviously where this takes place. This game. And then Central Europe you got as well. So you got West and East Germany, of course, before the unification of Germany. Poland and Romania, by the look of it, and a few other countries there. So it's obviously where you did a few of the missions, and this was to help you navigate around. And we've got another map there as well, and the 2 cassettes for Stealth Fighter. Sorry, to give its full name, Project Stealth Fighter. So there you go. Microprose, another simulation. We've got Silent Service, so obviously not air-based this one, obviously a submarine. So this was a submarine simulation. I think this has got quite a lot of stuff in it as well. First of all, we have ship recognition, very important of course when you're looking to torpedo someone. You don't torpedo one of your own ships, so a useful little chart to have there. The micro registration card from Microprose, list of keyboard commands, and the manual again, not quite as thick as the others, this one. obviously piloting a submarine is not quite as complex as flying an aeroplane, so that's just shy of 50 pages there, and a nice box with a cassette in. So, if any of you, I'm not a huge simulation fan, I'm going to try out a few of these. Obviously they take quite a lot of work to get into, so if anyone's played any of these games and knows anything about them and what they think about them, which one you think the best one, let me know, and I might put that one top of the pile. This is not a simulation, although it is more aircraft bound, but it's obviously based on the arcade game Afterburner, which came, of course, in that huge hydraulic machine. I don't think I've got much in here. Much briefer mission briefing here, as you'd expect. It's in different languages as well, so that bumps it up a little bit, but yeah, you don't need much here because basically the game is fly around and shoot shit. Right, next we've got 3 games from Incentive. They did a quite astounding technique for the time called Freescape, which was basically movement within a 3D environment, which was very rare back in the 80s on the Spectrum. I've got mixed feelings about these games. I've interviewed Ian Andrew of Incentive several times. The first time was for an article on Incentive, and we talked obviously a lot about Freescape. He felt that Incentive needed an angle. They couldn't really afford to have big budget licenses or anything, so he felt they needed an angle, and this angle he wanted to go for was this free movement in 3D. So there were proper 3D environments in which you moved around in a first-person view, solving the mystery, or in the case of Driller, capping off the holes which were threatening to destroy this moon. Yeah, technologically astounding. What they had to do to get the game moving at 1 frame per second on the Spectrum was just incredible. Part of it was coded by Ian's brother Chris, and I talked to him as well, and he took me through some of the techniques that they used, and it's just incredible really how they managed to squeeze this out of 48K Spectrum. But the games are pretty unplayable. I remember even at the time thinking, God, this is slow, tinkering around with it for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then picking up a simple shoot 'em up or something like that and having fun with that instead, because it really did hamper. I mean, it was great for atmosphere, and they tailored the games accordingly, because obviously they're not fast-paced games, but it did really wasn't the most thrilling gameplay, which back in the day, obviously, a lot of kids like me would have wanted just to play shoot-em-ups a lot of the time, or platform games. So, bit of a shame that, but they did absolutely the best they could with the technology. Driller was a huge hit. Darkseid, I believe, was based on a very similar engine, and that was a good game as well. And Total Eclipse, again the same engine. It was slightly adapted, I think, and it was obviously set on Earth this time and in Egypt. So there you had that. There was another one as well called Castle Master, which I haven't got my hands on yet. So they were very popular games actually at the time. They did sell quite well, despite the fact they were quite expensive. I think they were a tenner each. So you've got loading instructions there, Federation briefing, and there's quite a nice story in there. Setting the scene for you, and I think in the original release you also got a map of the moon which you could construct to form a 3-dimensional mapping model. Not quite sure what shape it was. Dodecahedron, I think it might have been, which helped you navigate around the moon which Driller is set on. So there you go, 3 nice games, certainly nicely presented games from Incentive there. Another one I've not played, The Hunt for Red October by Grand Slam. This was another quite big license back in the late 80s, quite like the film, starring Sean Connery, of course, as a Russian. Pics of the Atari ST version and the Amiga version, as we've already discussed. Another submarine simulation course, and inside this, you've got quite a lot inside this as well. These games would have retailed for about $10.99 or $9.99. So you got the command manual, and you got this, which looks very similar. Or very familiar. It's another ship recognition chart. It looks virtually identical to the one that we got in Silent Service. So that's interesting. And also, I bet this is a nice little, I'm not going to open it out probably, but yeah, it's a nice little poster of the cover and a tape there for The Hunt for Red October. So that's that. Just a few more to go here. Frankie. Now this, I've got a lot of affection for this game because, first of all, it's a really good game from Denton Designs and Ocean. It came with the live recording of Relax, which was really cool, little addition at the time, although this one doesn't have it. I remember playing that a lot and driving my parents a bit balmy, playing it over and over again. A great little game, lots of different types of games in it. It's like mini games in it. I think there is a Spectrum screenshot there. It's obviously before the Amiga and the Atari ST in 1985. Really fun little game to play, lots of little mini games in it, and it was quite, you had to solve this murder, although that was a bit of a MacGuffin, to be honest. And I've got a lot of nostalgia for this game because I got it free along with Ocean's Nomad with my first subscription to Ocean. So I picked Frankie because it came in a nice big box, and Nomad by Ocean, and I ended up playing Frankie a lot more than Nomad, which Nomad's an okay game, but I much prefer Frankie. Heavy Metal. Now this was another late 80s release by Access. This is a bit of an odd one, this. I remember buying it from Chelmsford Market near where I live for $2.99, and it came in a nice big box, and I thought, oh, that's nice. And I heard nothing about the game, and it looked like some sort of war simulation or something like that. And I remember getting the nice box home and I saw it was by Roger Carver and Bruce Carver. Certainly the latter is one of the people behind Beachhead, and you got Beachhead free with it as well. So I thought it was a pretty good package for $2.99. It came in a nice big box, and you open it up, and there's like one cassette and this tiny instruction manual in it in this huge box. So absolutely pathetic, really, why they felt the need to put it in a huge box. But I think we know why they did. I never actually got around to playing the game because I just loaded up Beachhead and just kept playing that instead. So Heavy Metal, got that towards the end of the Spectrums, or my time with the Spectrum. So yeah, never actually played that, so I'm going to have to give that one a go, I think. The famous Starglider. Yeah, I love this game. This was a brilliant game. A lot of money, 15 quid, but it was a superb game. And I remember reading from start to finish by James Follett this brilliant novella, which you had to read first, really, because it set the scene and gave the game huge atmosphere. The end, question mark. So that was a brilliant game, Starglider. Basically, just a shoot 'em up. So fairly simple game, but a great game nonetheless. Play guide, Spectrum key guide. Not a huge amount of keys needed, but we had a guide there. And I think this is another poster, or is it? Oh no, there's your AGAV, I think it was called, Airborne Ground Attack Vehicle. So that was what you piloted in the game as you were trying to destroy all the Stargliders. So yeah, I like a bit of Starglider. It's nice to have a nice, not mint, but good condition copy of that. Platoon was a very famous film, of course, about the Vietnam War, and it was turned into a game by Spectrum, and it comes in a very similar box to Starglider. This was a pretty good game. I remember playing this a bit, got a crash smash, and it also came with a poster, as you can see, which I think probably had on my bedroom wall next to Robocop. Instruction manual, looks like a registration bit of paper again, and two cassettes. I've got both the cassettes on this one, so I've got the game cassette at the top there, and also a special original Motown recording of Tracks of My Tears, which I probably played an awful lot as well and irritated my parents while I was playing Platoon. But here's a great song. So that's Platoon. Would have cost 10 quid, I reckon, that one. Screenshots on the back, and to be fair to Ocean, I think there might be a couple of specky screenshots there. No, looks like... Oh yeah, there's one. There's one. The first person bit. So it did vary it around a bit. Platoon. Looks like it's been bought from John Menzies, not for $1.99, no doubt. And finally, we have the infamous Great Space Race, which was a much hyped game from Legend. They'd done Valhalla, which was very well received. Lots of hype about the Great Space Race. Very nice cover. I like the way the lettering sort of warps around this kind of nebula eye artwork here. Came in a huge box. I think this is kind of like a video style box. It's not like the other ones here. It's not made of card. It's made of plastic. And I think these were popular at the time in rental video stores in some form. It looks a bit different, but because usually they'd be, I suppose, like that and open up this way. But this opens this way. And when it was released, this game was slated because essentially it was supposed to be like some amazing great program, and it ended up being a pretty simple dire game. Unfortunately, not much about it here, except it uses MovieSoft 2, and there's a Legend logo, and I think this game more or less meant the end of Legend. But having said that, you did get quite a nice package for your money. First of all, was a very nice instruction manual with a comic story inside it, which was nice. Not the best artwork ever, but nice little story there to accompany you. And then in the middle here, you have the cassette with the game on it on both sides, or on one side. And then you've got this very nice poster with it, which you could put on the wall, which is quite nicely drawn, better than the art in the comic, although it might be the same artist by the look of it. And you could put that on your wall and show off the fact that you had the great space race, although you might not want to play it because, as I say, it wasn't the best game. I think it was released in 1984 or 85, and by the time it was released, it was quite uncommon for games to be partly coded in BASIC, and it was, I believe, and it was supposed to have these like great emotional responses and God knows what else, and it basically didn't have it. So it was a bit of a flop, but it came in a lovely box. So not that hard to get hold of, so I guess there are a lot of unsold copies of this lying around. So there you go, there's a quick tour through my big box collection of Spectrum games. Thanks for watching, and I'll post another video soon. Cheers, bye.